up your engine. Now you've got an all-wheel drive Toyota RAV4, and the customer took it to the dealer, and they told him that he needed about $750 worth of suspension work done on the car. So let's check it out and see if they were giving him a line of baloney or not. They said that the rear was worn, so let's jack it up in the air. Now the first thing we're going to do is look at the tires. Now, his girlfriend was bad, I should say his ex-girlfriend. Tires she put on. The tread patterns aren't even the same. Now you can see this is all-wheel drive, so it's got a pretty tricked out suspension system. They told him that he needed $750 worth of work. So let's start checking stuff out. I don't see any torn or ripped bushings yet anywhere. Yeah, corrosion over time, so we're going to spray some WD-40 on that before we put it back together. But let's check out the shock. They told him that the shock is leaking. The shock is dry as a bone. They're full of crap. Now, I guarantee if he went back and said, well, the mechanic checked it, they're going to say, well, because of the mileage of your vehicle, we recommend that you put new shocks on the thing. Well, total nonsense. It's only 10 years old. My wife's Lexus is 19 years old. It still has the original ones on. It works perfectly fine. And yes, if you look at them, they're dirty. So is this one. You get that old, they're going to be dirty. It means nothing. Now, if it was covered in fluid, it'd mean the hydraulic fluid had gone because the seals are shot and it's time for new ones. And if you do put new ones, my advice is stick to the factory ones. They're really well made in the case of Toyotas. You go to a cheap discount auto parts store and you get Monroe's or something. They're garbage. They won't ride as well. They won't last as long. If you're going to change it, put good ones. But this one, it doesn't need them. And while we're in here, we'll check everything else. These bushings are fine. Control arm bushings are fine. Even the rubber stop is still solid and in good shape. A lot of times they rot, but it's only a stop, no big deal, but it's still in excellent shape. They were trying to sell them a bill of goods. Even the front, it's perfectly fine. It doesn't have any rotten bushings or cracks or anything in it. I don't know how many times I get the stuff coming over here. They go to the dealer, they try to sell them a bunch of stuff. I guess they assume people are stupid and they're not going to go anywhere else, and they'll say, go ahead and do it. In this case, he was smart. He came here, and I'm saying, you don't have to do anything to the car. Now we'll put this wheel back on. We'll check the other side. Now before we do the other side, remember, this is a four-wheel drive vehicle. And his girlfriend, not only was she going cheap buying used tires, she didn't understand that this is an all-wheel drive vehicle. All four tires not only have to be the same brand and tread, but they have to be the same age. Because if some have less tread than the other, it'll mess with the all-wheel drive system. It'll keep trying to compensate with the all-wheel drive so all the wheels spin at the same speed. The computers are monitoring that, and if they see it's off and you got different sized tires, you're going to ruin all that stuff because you were too cheap. Never be cheap in an all-wheel drive vehicle. Now check this side. Now, if you notice, that side came off smooth. They're not as corroded. And here we go again. You can see everything is pretty much dry. The rubber's good. Bench and bushings, front, back, side, they're all fine. Even here, where there's a lot of torsion, it's still in good shape. Basically, they were trying to sell him a bill of goods of stuff he didn't need. So we'll make it so it lasts. Spray a little air. Da-da. The wheel back on. And we'll start it up. Typical Toyota, starts right up, back up. It's old, so there's no backup camera, but that's life. Now we're taking it for a road test, and as far as I'm concerned, I work on enough of these things. This thing rides exactly like a RAV4 does. It's not a limousine, but you see when we hit the bumps, it's not particularly bouncing all over the place. They bounce a little, but they're getting a brand new one. It bounces too. When I'm cornering, doesn't have any particular sway, and that's kind of amazing considering it's got 4 different tires on it. You take the corners, doesn't oversteer. I'm really amazed with these 4 bad tires on it. It runs as good as it does. But as you can see, it's not bouncing up and down. If the back was bad, this thing would be bouncing like mad. It is not, even when we're going over bumpy areas. So now you know the truth about this particular car and the truth about dealerships. They want to sell you a bunch of stuff. They got millions of overhead. You, the customer, is going to have to pay it. If there isn't a real problem, they'll make one up. They just assume that all mechanics are dishonest, and that if he would have taken it to another mechanic, the guy would have just said, oh yeah, you need all those parts, but oh, you know, it's not $750. I can do it for $600. I say that all the time. Not with me, because I tell people the truth about stuff. So this is why you want to learn a little yourself about it. What to check out, what to look at, and not get ripped off by people trying to sell you stuff that you just don't need. And to make matters worse, in some cases, I've had customers that were told yeah, they're worn out. So they say, well, no, that's too much. Then they go to a cheap discount auto parts store. They buy the cheapest shocks or struts they can and put them on, and find out that, lo and behold, it rides worse with the new cheap ones than with their old ones that were 10 years old. So, in this case, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, but learn how you can tell if it's broke versus if it's not broke. And here's some bonus questions and answers. Fuel Mac 101 says, what do you think of this thing? It's called the Gadget Man Groove Throttle Body. It claims you get better gas mileage. Is it snake oil? It probably is snake oil. I have seen so many things that promise better gas mileage. Realize one thing. When they manufacture these cars, the manufacturer are under immense pressure to get better gas mileage. If something like that worked, believe me, they'd build them that way. You know, if there was a magic oil that they could put in the engines and made them get more power and better gas mileage, guess what? They'd put that magic oil in the cars when they built them to get better ratings. But there isn't any, so they don't. It's only common sense. There's so many scams out there these days. Well, at least the scams will probably start to lighten up lately, because when the price of oil goes down and gas is cheap, nobody cares. But when it gets really high, then all the rats come out of the woodwork and start trying to sell you stuff. But almost all of it's a total scam. Yellow 84 says, Scotty, why do I feel my 2001 Chevy Astro van burns too much gas? Well, realize vans are gas hogs. They're big, they're square, so they're not aerodynamic. They're heavy. They have larger engines. They have a lot more friction. Generally, a lot of them are rear-wheel drive. Rear-wheel drive engines get worse gas mileage. There's more friction with the drive shaft and the big rear end. They're just inefficient. You want to make sure, of course, the spark plugs are clean, the air filter's clean, that the brakes aren't sticking on. Jack it up, spin the wheels. Maybe a brake caliper's sticking. That's going to knock it out. And make sure that your transmission is always shifting into the highest gear soon enough. Let's say you got a 4-speed transmission. If it only shifts 3 times, you're going to get crappy gas mileage if it doesn't go into the final drive. So you want to check all that stuff first. But if all that's working, they're vans and they're gas hogs. That's just how vans are. Biomechanoid says, Scotty, I want to recharge my car's AC. It's 14 years old and one side's cool, one side's warm. I asked some phone places and they said $50 and they said it takes 10 minutes. I don't believe it's a 10-minute job. What do you say? To do it correctly, it's not a 10-minute job. Now, what they're talking about is topping it up. You can get a rough estimation by, you figure it's low, so you put gauge on it, and then you add refrigerant, and you watch the gauge, and when it gets to a certain pressure, you turn it off, and it's blowing cold, you say, okay, that's good enough. But that's not perfect. The only way to actually do it correctly, if you want to be right spot on, you pay a mechanic like me, and we have a machine that evacuates them and recycles refrigerant. So we empty it out into that recycling machine. Then it's empty. Then we fill it up with a factory load by weight. I have got a reverse scale and say it says 18.5 ounces. Then I watch the scale. When it gets to 18.5 ounces, I turn it off and I know it's perfectly full. You can add it here and there with the gauges and you can get it to go okay. But if you want it perfect, you got to empty it all out. Then you got to fill it in by weight. You can do it by volume too. Some guys have volumetric ones, but that's costs a lot of money. It makes it more complicated. It's just as easy to have a reverse scale and then just watch it go. When it gets to that weight, you turn it off. Shirella Rama 2 says, got an 05 BMW X5. Sometimes it cranks for a really long time. Sometimes it cranks slowly. I had the battery tested. That checks out to be okay. What could be wrong? Well, the main thing is you got an X5. One of the biggest money pits on it is a 15-year-old one. There are numerous things that can do that. But from my experience, it's generally one of 2 things. You said you had the battery tested and it passed. So if the battery's good, then either the alternator's not charging the battery right or your starter's starting to go out. Now, it's very easy. You can go any place that knows how to check alternators. Places like AutoZone even do it free. Have the alternator tested. The last one I fixed like that, all it needed was a new alternator. Put it on and fixed it. Or if it shows the alternator's charging and the battery's good and sometimes slow, it could easily be the starter going out. As they start to go, they'll crank the engine slower, so it takes longer to start them up. As long as the battery and alternator are working, generally on those, it means it's time for a starter. And they're pretty expensive. I know you got to take a lot of crap off to get them off. It's a typical BMW horrible design. Could just be the alternator. And that's not cheap either, but it's cheaper than putting a starter on that thing. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.